I didn't think I'd be starting over at 68. But here we are. Me. Sitting in the house I built with my husband. Holding a chipped mug of tea I forgot I'd made. Staring out the window like the answer to all of this might be blooming in my overgrown rose bushes. Funny, isn't it? How life doesn't fall apart all at once. It frays. One thread at a time. Until you don't even notice you're unraveling. Until something yanks that last thread, and suddenly you're standing in your own kitchen, unsure where everything went wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it felt safe. Where it always feels safe. My name is Evelyn Gallagher. I was a wife for 42 years. A mother for 39. A woman for all of them, although sometimes I forgot that last part. I raised 2 kids. Buried 1 husband. Paid off a mortgage and a minivan. I baked casseroles when someone died and banana bread when someone was born. I sent birthday cards on time with real stamps. And until 8 months ago, I thought I'd done a decent job. Then the phone rang. It was Mark, my son. His voice was different. Tired. Flat. But still his. Still my boy. She left me, Mom. Silence. Then. She took the kids. I don't even know what to do anymore. And just like that, I was back in mom mode. The woman with the answers. The soft landing. The we'll figure it out voice I hadn't used in years. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. He sounded broken. So I said the only thing that mattered. Come home, sweetheart. Stay as long as you need. He showed up the next evening with 2 suitcases and a trash bag full of dry cleaning. No smile. Just hollow eyes and a forced, hey. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he's 6'2" and broad like his father. But, emotionally, shrunken. I made his favorite tuna casserole. He poked at it. Said he wasn't hungry. Just tired. I just need a week, he mumbled. Maybe 2. I told him to stay as long as he wanted. That was 8 months ago. Back then, I still thought it was a blessing. To have him home. To feel useful again. To cook for someone who actually finished a plate. The first week was quiet. He slept in late. Took long walks. Watched old game shows on the couch like he was trying to disappear into someone else's life. I kept my distance. Didn't pry. I remember thinking, let him breathe. Let him heal. I washed his clothes. Put fresh sheets on the guest bed. Even baked banana bread. Just because. And when I heard him cry in the bathroom one night, I pretended not to. That's what mothers do, right? We carry the silence. The second week, he started helping. Changed the light bulbs in the hallway. Fixed the wobbly step on the porch. Reorganized my kitchen pantry to make it more efficient. I laughed. Told him it looked like a grocery store shelf. He smiled, barely. You need structure, Mom, he said. It helps your mind stay sharp. It felt like a compliment. Until I realized he'd moved all the pots and pans, too. Even changed the labels on my spice jars. Cumin became C. Paprika was P. It all made sense to him. But I didn't say anything. Because when your child is hurting, you don't correct them. You absorb. You adapt. Then came the mail. One afternoon, I noticed it hadn't arrived. Oh, he said. I get it now. Easier this way. He'd set up a forwarding address to himself. Just so nothing gets missed, he said. I told myself it was practical. He'd been through a lot. He needed to feel in control. A few days later, my Wi-Fi password stopped working. He changed it. Said mine was too easy to guess. He showed me the new one. Wrote it on a sticky note. I lost it. When I asked again, he sighed. Deep. Like I'd asked him to solve world peace. Just, let me handle it, Mom. That phrase became his favorite. Let me handle it. He handled the bills. The groceries. The phone plan. Even my prescription refills. He meant well, I told myself. It's just temporary. One night, I woke up thirsty. Went to the kitchen. Couldn't find my debit card in my purse. The next morning, I asked him about it. You probably misplaced it, he said. You've been forgetful lately. Forgetful? I wanted to argue. But instead, I checked the freezer. Found a package of frozen peas I didn't remember buying. And for a second, I wondered. That's how it starts. Not with control, but with doubt. He started reminding me of things I hadn't forgotten. You already told me that. You asked me that yesterday. You never called the pharmacy, remember? I didn't. But I was sure I had. Wasn't I? Then one evening he made us tea. Sat across from me. Said, I think we should talk about the future. He had papers. Forms. Highlighted sections. I found a great elder law attorney, he said. Nothing dramatic. Just precaution. Medical decisions. Banking. The usual. The top form read durable power of attorney. I blinked. I'm fine, I said. I know, he replied, all sweetness. But you won't always be. I didn't sign. He didn't ask again, not directly. But things shifted. The house became his in tiny, almost invisible ways. He started answering the door, deciding what groceries we needed, telling my friends I was resting when they called. One day, I walked to the pharmacy by myself. My bus card didn't work. I asked at the desk. Your son switched you to home delivery, they said. He hadn't told me. I walked home, the long way, just to feel something. That night, I stood in the hallway, looked in the mirror, and for a second, I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She looked dull, faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. That's when I knew. This wasn't about comfort or healing. This was about erasure. And it wasn't going to stop. Because people like him, they don't ask for power. They assume it. And people like me, we give it away, piece by piece, until one day we wake up wondering if we ever existed outside of someone else's shadow. But I do exist. I always have. And now, it's time to remember what that means. They say you don't notice the cage until you try to leave it. But I think that's wrong. I think, deep down, you always feel the bars, even if you tell yourself they're for your own good. After that night in the hallway, that moment when I looked into the mirror and didn't recognize my own face, something inside me stirred. Not strength. Not yet. More like resistance. Like a flicker of heat when you strike a damp match. Almost nothing. But maybe enough. The next morning I made breakfast. Toast. 2 eggs. Bacon. Extra crispy the way Mark likes it. He didn't come downstairs. I waited. Checked my watch. Wandered to the hallway where I heard the sound of his voice. On the phone. I'm doing everything, he was saying. She's barely functioning. She's not safe alone. Pause. Then. No, she doesn't know I'm calling yet. My hands started shaking. I stepped back before he could see me. Returned to the kitchen. Poured the coffee. Pretended I hadn't just heard my own child plotting something. That afternoon, I found my pill organizer on the counter, open. Half the compartments empty. The Monday slot filled. Even though it was Tuesday. I asked him if he'd reorganized it. He looked at me like I'd accused him of murder. I'm just trying to help, Mom. You've been all over the place. Was I? The week before, I'd forgotten to water the garden. I'd burned the rice. I lost my keys. Twice. But forgetfulness isn't a crime. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a reason to be erased. Still, his words stuck. All over the place. It echoed. The next few days, he got busier. Busy taking over. He called the insurance company. Asked questions about future coverage. He ordered a walker online. Told the pharmacist I was struggling with coordination. Then, the locks changed. Again. This time, I hadn't even noticed until I came back from the mailbox and my key didn't fit. He let me in. Smiled. Said, just updating the system. No explanation. No spare key. Just access removed. But the scariest part? I didn't fight it. I went to my room, sat on the bed, and stared at the door. That night, I wrote my name over and over in my notebook, just to prove I still knew how. Then came the stove. I boiled water, made tea, walked away to answer the phone. 10 minutes later, he came in yelling. Steam rising from the kettle. The house could have burned down, he said. He unplugged the stove, removed the knobs. Just like that, my kitchen became a danger zone. And I became the threat. The next day, he called Thea. I only found out because she called me later, confused and concerned. He said you nearly set the house on fire, Mom, she said. And that you're forgetting names. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Not shame, fury. I forgot nothing, I told her. I walked away for a minute. That's all. But the doubt was planted. Even in her voice. I could hear the hesitation. Then came the calendar. I'd always used a paper planner. Nothing fancy. Just a pocket one with tiny squares and ink smudges. One morning it disappeared. Your handwriting was getting hard to read, Mark said. I moved everything to a shared digital calendar, but I didn't know how to access it. I'll manage it, he said. And I realized I no longer knew when my own doctor appointments were. He'd erased my sense of time. I started feeling smaller every day. Quieter. Duller. I stopped humming. Stopped reading. Stopped correcting him when he said things that weren't true, like, you never liked that chair, or you haven't called Carol in weeks. I had. I knew I had. I remembered the sound of her voice, but he insisted I hadn't. And that's when I realized what this was. Gaslighting. A word I'd heard 1,000 times. Seen in articles. Read about in stories about toxic marriages. But never, not once, did I imagine it would happen between a mother and her child. It's not just lies. It's control through confusion. Control through the soft erasure of self. And it works, slowly. It makes you doubt your own memory, your mind, your sanity. I began writing everything down, hiding little notes around the house. Called Carol Monday 3:12 p.m. Put keys in red bowl. Watered roses, wore blue sweater. Proof of my own life. Proof that I wasn't disappearing. Then came the forms. Again. Just sign here, he said. They were all pre-filled. Power of attorney. Medical consent. A draft will. I asked, why is my signature already on this? He didn't blink. I copied it to save time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my closet. Pulled out an old box. Inside were birth certificates. Marriage license. Hector's pension paperwork. And the original deed to the house. All still there. But I knew. It wouldn't last. He was circling. Positioning. Waiting for me to break. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called a lawyer. Her name was Ellen. Sharp voice. Gentle eyes. I told her everything. She didn't say much at first. Just listened. Then she said, he's trying to establish incompetence. Slowly. Strategically. I laughed. It sounded like a bark. Strategically? He's my son. That doesn't mean he's not also your predator. That word hit like a slap. Predator. But she was right. The next week, things escalated. He installed cameras. In the hallway. The living room. Facing the back door. Just in case, he said. In case of what? I asked. He didn't answer. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone again. She's declining faster than expected, he said. I'll have the paperwork by Friday. I didn't know who he was talking to, but I knew what it meant. He was getting ready to take everything. Not just the stove. Not just the bills. Not just the mail. But me. So I called Thea. Told her everything. Every lie. Every silence. Every erased name and missing memory. She was quiet. Then said, I'm coming over. When she arrived, she hugged me harder than she had in years. Then she looked me in the eye. You are not crazy. I cried like I hadn't cried in months. We spent that night gathering documents. Taking photos. Recording my version of events. Because now, this wasn't just survival. It was defense. That night, I heard Mark in the hallway. Trying the doorknob. It was locked. He knocked once. Said, You're making this worse. And I thought, no, sweetheart. You did that all by yourself. You don't realize how much your identity relies on being believed. Until someone decides not to. Until your own child looks at you across the kitchen table. And says, that didn't happen. That's what he said. Word for word. About the locks. About the missing bills. About the medication I didn't remember him moving. That didn't happen, Mom. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Not because I wasn't sure, but because I suddenly realized. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't poor communication. This was strategy. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling above my bed looked warped. The shadows didn't feel like shadows. They felt like warnings. I got up, turned on the lamp, sat at my desk. I opened the drawer and took out my notebook. Not the floral one I kept out in the open. The real one. The one I'd hidden inside an old shoebox marked holiday decorations. Inside were 6 weeks of notes, dates, incidents, phone calls I hadn't made, packages I hadn't ordered, bills I hadn't seen. I sat there for hours, reading my own handwriting like it was a stranger's confession. Then I wrote 3 words in block letters across the next blank page. Call. A lawyer. In the morning, I called Ellen. She answered on the second ring. I need to talk, I said. Her voice softened instantly. I've got time. We met the next day, at a cafe across from her office. I wore my nicest coat, straightened my back, ordered chamomile tea with honey even though I didn't taste a drop. She listened to everything. Then she reached into her briefcase and handed me a packet. Your son has already started the paperwork, she said. I found his attorney's name on a public filing list. He's petitioning for guardianship. I blinked. Already? She nodded. Once that gets approved, you won't be able to open a bank account, make medical decisions, even stay in your own home without his consent. I felt my throat close. Why would he do this? Ellen leaned forward. Because it gives him power, and because he thinks you won't fight back. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, looked around the room, and realized how much of it no longer belonged to me. The fridge was full of his groceries. The living room, rearranged. My chair had become his. And then it hit me. I wasn't a guest. I was the hostage. The next day, I called Thea. Told her everything. This time, I didn't soften it. Didn't say maybe. Didn't use careful words. I told her the truth, exactly as it had unfolded. She drove over within the hour. No coat. Just a sweater and a storm in her eyes. She hugged me. Sat down. Said, we're going to fix this. I cried into her hair. Felt like a mother again. Felt like me. We spent the whole afternoon scanning documents, taking pictures of notes, backing up audio recordings from the hallway. Because I'd started recording, you see. I'd hidden a small recorder in the hallway bookshelf, just in case. And now, the evidence was irrefutable. Him saying I was slipping, telling someone on the phone, I'll have the paperwork signed by next week. She won't even know. We built a case. We built my case. The next few days were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and preparations. I filed a formal objection to his guardianship petition. I revoked any informal permissions I'd given. And then came the confrontation. I walked into the living room one evening and found him sitting on the couch, drinking whiskey. He looked up, surprised to see me standing so tall. You're up late, he said. I've been talking to a lawyer, I replied. He went still. Excuse me, I know about the petition. I've read the paperwork. He set down his glass slowly. Mom, you've been confused. You need help. No, I said, I need my house back. He laughed. It was small. Cruel. You don't even know where your calendar is, and you think you can handle a court case? I do, I said. Because I remember the person I was before you moved in. And she didn't second-guess herself. His voice hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said. But it's my mistake to make. He stood. Too quickly. For a second, I thought he might yell. Throw something. Instead, he leaned in. Who do you think they'll believe? His voice was low, razor sharp. I'm the good son. The caregiver. You're a lonely old woman who leaves the stove on. I looked him in the eye. I think they'll believe the woman who remembers who she is, even if it took her a little while to say it out loud. That was the last real conversation we had before the hearing. The day it arrived, I wore my navy suit. The one I bought for Hector's funeral. The one with the pearl buttons and sleeves I always have to roll up. I wanted to look like myself, not the version he'd built. The real me. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, peeling linoleum, benches that smelled like old wood and cleaning solution. Mark was already there, wearing a crisp shirt and his practiced smile. His lawyer was a man in a gray suit who looked like he'd never called his own mother once in his life. The judge, a woman in her early 60s, adjusted her glasses and said, "Let's begin." His attorney spoke first. Said I was declining. Said Mark had stepped in to protect me. Said I'd accused my son of terrible things without evidence. Then Ellen stood. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't dramatize. She simply laid out the facts. The recordings. The forged signatures. The camera installations. The banking transfers. The judge listened. And then, it was my turn. I stood. Walked to the podium. My hands were shaking. But my voice? Steady. "I'm not senile," I said. "I'm scared. And I'm hurt. Because my son, my child, used my love as a weapon." Mark flinched. Just a little. I let him in because I thought he needed help. I trusted him because that's what mothers do. But I will not be erased while I'm still alive. I paused. Looked the judge straight in the eye. And I remember who I am. Even if he tried to make me forget. The courtroom was silent. Even the bailiff looked up from his phone. The judge nodded slowly, then delivered her decision. The guardianship petition? Denied. The forged documents? Referred to the district attorney. Mark stood, red-faced, muttered something I couldn't hear. Then he stormed out. Didn't even look at me. The hearing was over. But the grief wasn't. Because what no one tells you is, winning a case like this? It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving a fire, only to stand in the ashes of what used to be your family. Thea hugged me so tight I thought I'd break. She whispered, "You did it." I nodded. But part of me was already gone. Still standing at that table. Still watching the boy I raised become a man I couldn't recognize. That night, back home, I sat on the porch. The garden was dark. The stars were shy. But I was free. And for now, that was enough. People talk about freedom like it's a sunrise. Bright, warm, triumphant. But let me tell you what it really feels like. It feels like standing in your own kitchen after a court hearing and realizing the house is quiet because the person you were fighting off is finally gone. It feels like silence. Not peace. Just silence. And a refrigerator full of food you don't remember buying. Cabinets arranged by someone else's logic. Shoes by the door that don't belong to anyone anymore. He moved out 2 days after the court hearing. Didn't pack much. Took his laptop. His gym bag. A few shirts. Left behind a broken chair in the garage. And a half-empty bottle of whiskey. No note. No goodbye. Just absence. You'd think I'd feel victorious. Relieved. Vindicated. But all I felt was tired. Bone deep, soul-heavy tired. Because this isn't the part anyone prepares you for. The part where you win. And still feel like you've lost something you can never quite name. I wandered through the house like a stranger. Noticed things I hadn't paid attention to in months. The little crack in the hallway paint. The tea mug with a chipped rim I always meant to replace. A photo of me and Mark at his high school graduation. Still on the fridge. I didn't take it down. Not yet. Because even when someone turns into a stranger, you don't forget who they were. I remembered everything in that photo. The smell of his cologne. The way he laughed when I tried to fix his cap. The pride in my chest that day. I loved that boy. I still do. But the man he became? That's someone I don't know. The next morning I made tea. For one. I opened the windows. Let in the spring air. It smelled like damp earth and lilacs. And for a moment, I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just soft, steady tears. For the months I'd lost. For the version of him that never came back. For the trust I'd buried like a dead bird in the backyard. I called Thea that afternoon. Told her I was okay. Which was only half a lie. She came over anyway. Brought muffins. Sat on the porch with me. We didn't say much. Didn't need to. Sometimes love sounds like silence. And shows up with pastries. She asked me gently if I wanted to change the locks. I said yes. Not because I thought he'd come back. But because I needed to feel like this was mine again. All of it. That night, I stood in the guest room. The bed was still made. His toothbrush still in the bathroom. Drawers half empty. I sat on the edge of the mattress and exhaled. This was the room where he unraveled. And I let him. Because I thought that's what mothers do. But now I wasn't just his mother. I was a woman who had survived something people don't like to talk about. Elder abuse. There. I said it. Ugly words, right? Makes people uncomfortable. But that's what it was. Manipulation. Gaslighting. Isolation. Control. And all wrapped in the language of love. No one wants to believe it. Because it doesn't look like violence. It looks like just helping. Like concern. Like, I'm doing this for your own good. But it steals you anyway. It steals your dignity. Your name. Your voice. And now that mine was back. I planned to use it. The next week, I made appointments. Doctor. Therapist. Banker. Each one a step toward reclaiming something small but sacred. My autonomy. At the bank, the manager, Carla, looked at me with a mix of pity and confusion. "We're so sorry, Mrs. Gallagher," she said. "No one should be able to make withdrawals from your account without consent." I told her he used charm like a crowbar. And I wasn't the first, probably wouldn't be the last. She nodded. Said they were adding new protections. Gave me a new PIN. Felt like changing the locks inside myself. At the doctor's office, I asked for a cognitive assessment. Voluntarily. "I want it on record," I said. The doctor raised an eyebrow. Said most patients avoid those tests. I said I needed to know for me. I passed with flying colors. Even remembered the random 3 words they asked me to repeat 10 minutes later. Apple. Mirror. Calendar. I said them out loud again in the parking lot. Just for myself. Apple. Mirror. Calendar. I smiled. I was still here. Then came the therapist. A woman named Nadine. Late 40s. Eyes like polished glass, sharp and kind at the same time. She didn't ask me to start at the beginning. She asked me how I was sleeping. I said, with one eye open. She said that made sense. It took 3 sessions before I told her about the notebook. The one I'd hidden. The one full of dates and questions and desperate proof that I wasn't crazy. She asked if I still wrote in it. I said yes. But now, the words were different. I planted tulips today. I made lemon cake without forgetting the sugar. I remembered that I am not fragile. She smiled. Said that's the beginning of post-traumatic clarity. I liked that phrase. Sounded like hope. One night, I found myself walking out to the backyard. Barefoot. The air was cool. The grass soft. The sky full of stars I hadn't looked at in months. I stood there for a long time. Let the quiet wrap around me like a shawl. And I thought, this is mine. Not just the land. Not just the air. But the life. My life. And no one gets to rewrite it but me. Later that week, I got a letter. From Mark. Typed. 2 paragraphs. Said he was sorry if I felt hurt. Said he hoped I would heal and find closure. Said he was focusing on his own growth and would be stepping back from family dynamics. No apology. No ownership. Just distance. It made me angry at first. Then numb. Then, oddly grateful. Because now I knew. He wasn't coming back. Not as the son I remembered. Not as the man I tried to believe in. And maybe that was okay. Not everything broken has to be mended. Some things just have to be released. So I took the letter. Folded it once. Tucked it into the same shoebox as the notebook. Not to hold on. Just to remind myself. I survived this. Me. Evelyn Gallagher. Wife. Mother. Woman. Warrior. Still standing. Still here. And finally. Free. They say silence is golden. But no one ever tells you it can also be heavy. Like walking into a room where someone's just left. But the air hasn't quite settled. Like hearing your own footsteps in a hallway that used to hold 2 voices. After Mark left, the house felt strange. Not better. Not worse. Just mine. But also not yet familiar. I walked from room to room with a strange kind of caution. As if touching too much might wake something I wasn't ready to face. His shoes were gone. His razor in the bathroom gone. His jacket on the hook by the door gone. But what remained was louder. The reorganized kitchen. The extra locks. The invisible outline of the way my world had been rearranged, without my permission. I stood in the living room, watching a dust particle float in a sunbeam, and thought, this is the quiet that comes after. After a storm. After the wreckage. After you've been forced to rebuild not your house, but your sense of self. I spent that first week moving slowly. Not because I was tired, but because I needed to make every step my own again. I moved the salt back to its rightful shelf. Labeled my spice jars in big, neat letters. Paprika. Cumin. Oregano. I stood in front of my tea cabinet for a long time, just choosing what I wanted. Not what he thought was best for my digestion. Not what he ordered in bulk. But the one I always used to drink when I had a quiet evening to myself. Chamomile with honey. I made a cup, sat by the window, held it in both hands, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I needed to justify myself to anyone. It was just me, this tea, the light, the hum of my refrigerator, and it was enough. Later that evening, I wandered into the guest room, the one he'd used. The bed was still made, closet doors ajar, the air stale. I sat down, looked around, and there it was. A notebook. One of mine. The old kind, with blue flowers and a worn spine. I opened it. My handwriting. But distorted. Crossed out lines. Rewritten lists. Dates that didn't match. He'd been keeping his notes in my journal. There was a page where he'd written, Mom forgot to turn off stove again. Called Carol twice, seemed confused. Asked same question 3x. I stared at those words. Not because they were true, but because, for a time, I believed they might be. I closed the notebook, put it in a box, and labeled it, softly in my mind. Proof of the gaslight. That night, I dreamed of Hector. He was sitting at the dining room table, working on one of his crosswords. Looked up, smiled, said, You always knew how to put things back where they belong. I woke up with tears in my eyes and a smile on my lips. I said his name out loud. Hector. Just to hear it again. Just to remind myself that someone in my life had loved me. Purely. Thea visited the next afternoon. Brought over tulip bulbs. You said last year you wanted them by the fence, she said. I had. I didn't remember telling her. We planted them together. The soil was soft. Still damp from the last rain. We didn't talk about Mark. We talked about pie crusts. About arthritis. About the cardinal that kept landing on the fence post like it owned the place. When she left, she kissed my forehead. You're glowing, she said. I told her it was just dirt under my nails. But we both knew it wasn't. It was peace. The kind that comes when the world finally stops spinning, and you get to sit down. That night, I lit a candle. Turned off the overhead lights. Put on a record. Yes, a real record. Scratched, warm, filled with crackles and static. Hector's favorite jazz album. I sat with my tea, curled under a blanket. Listened to the saxophone like it was a conversation I hadn't had in years. I slept well that night. Better than I had in months. In the morning, I stood in the garden. Watched the breeze move the daffodils. Felt the sun on my face. I said out loud, This is mine. And I meant it. Later that day, I wrote a letter. To myself. I keep a new notebook now. Clean. Unrolled. No evidence. Just expression. The letter started with, Dear Evelyn, you made it. I didn't write about Mark. Not directly. I wrote about healing. About forgiveness. Not for him, but for myself. For waiting too long. For doubting too much. I wrote, You can miss someone and still be glad they're gone. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. Both can be true. I folded the letter. Tucked it into a blue box I keep on my dresser. One day, maybe Lucy will read them. Maybe not. Either way, they're there. Proof of who I am, and who I kept being, even when it was hard. The next week, I got a call from my friend Carol. She said, I miss you. I said, I miss myself. She came over that Sunday. Brought lemon bars. We played cards. Laughed about how bad we both were at remembering the rules. She paused at one point and said, "You seem lighter." And I realized I was. Not weight. Not worry. But that thing you don't notice you're carrying. Until it's finally gone. One morning, I passed the mirror in the hallway. Stopped. Looked. Really looked. I saw lines. Gray roots. Eyes a little duller than they used to be. But I also saw something else. Pride. Not the loud kind. Not the performative kind. The kind that comes from having walked through fire. And not come out bitter. Just wiser. I leaned closer to the mirror. Whispered. "I believe you. Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? After someone spends months, years, making you question yourself, the real healing comes when you decide you don't need outside confirmation. You are your own witness. Your own advocate. Your own truth. And now, every time I light a candle, make a cup of tea, plant something new in the garden, I say to myself, this is part of coming back. Because I'm not rebuilding the same life. I'm making something new. Slower. Quieter. More deliberate. But mine. Fully, finally mine. There are things I never told my children. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't think they needed to know. Like how I used to cry in the laundry room, with the dryer running so no one would hear. Or how sometimes I'd sit in the parked car for 15 minutes after grocery shopping, just to have a moment alone. How many mothers keep those secrets? How many of us carry stories folded in our pockets, soft at the edges from being handled, but never shared? I kept a box. A real one. Tucked away in the back of my closet, behind old sweaters and a broken umbrella. Inside. Letters. Not dozens. Hundreds. Some were addressed to Mark. Others to Hector, even years after he passed. Some to myself. And a few to no one. I never meant for anyone to read them. They weren't confessions. Or diaries. Or proof. They were just echoes of all the parts of me that didn't fit into motherhood or marriage or survival. After Mark left, I found myself sitting with the box more often. Not crying. Not even reading. Just acknowledging that these pages existed. That I existed, even when no one was looking. One letter I'd written to Mark years ago caught my eye. It was dated the day he graduated college. I'd never given it to him. It said, "I'm proud of you. I hope the world is kind. And if it isn't, I hope you still remember that I am." My handwriting looked firmer then. More certain. And yet, I hadn't sent it. Why? Because life moves fast. Because he was already packing the car. Because I thought I'd have more time. I always thought I'd have more time. Now I'm 68. And time doesn't feel endless anymore. So I started writing again. Not about the past. Not out of anger. But as a way to chart my present. I wrote letters to Lucy. To Thea. To the garden. To the version of me who thought she wasn't allowed to want more. Each Sunday I write one. Sometimes short. Sometimes pages long. One week I wrote, "Today I noticed the lilacs bloomed early. They didn't ask for permission. They just bloomed. I think I'd like to live that way." Another read. "Dear Lucy, I hope one day you understand how soft strength can be. How quiet. How rooted. I don't know if I'll ever give these to her. Maybe I'll leave them behind, like breadcrumbs, so that when I'm gone, she won't feel alone. She'll know that someone saw her, even before she saw herself." One afternoon, I showed Thea the box. We sat on the porch, drank tea. I lifted the lid. She touched the paper like it was made of something fragile. "You wrote all of these?" I nodded. She smiled. "Can I read one?" I hesitated, then handed her one labeled, July 1998. In it, I'd written about a summer storm. How I'd let Mark and Thea run outside in their pajamas. How I stood barefoot on the porch, watching them shriek and laugh as the rain soaked their hair. How, for a moment, I forgot to worry. When she finished reading, Thea looked at me and said, "You were always stronger than you let us see." That stuck with me. Stronger than I let them see. Because I thought love meant softness. Sacrifice. Silence. But maybe love can be loud, too. Maybe it can draw boundaries. Maybe it can say no, and still mean forever. That same week, I got a letter. Not from Mark. From his daughter, Lucy. A real, handwritten letter. On lined paper. With a sticker in the corner. A tiny gold star. She's 12. It said, "Dear Grandma, Mom says I should write to people I miss. I miss you. I don't know what happened with Daddy, but I don't think you're mean. I think you're soft. Like pancakes." I laughed when I read it. Laughed so hard I cried. Soft like pancakes. God, I'll keep that one forever. I wrote her back. Told her I missed her too. Told her I was proud of how thoughtful she was. And that no matter what happened between grown-ups, my love for her would never change. I sealed the envelope. Mailed it the next morning. And for the rest of that day, I felt whole. Because connection doesn't always come through grand gestures. Sometimes it's a sticker on lined paper. Sometimes it's a single page in a box full of unspoken things. One morning I woke up early. Watched the sun rise from the kitchen window. The sky turned orange, then pink, then gold. I thought about Hector. About Mark. About Lucy. And I whispered. I did my best. Then paused. And added. And now I'm doing better. Because that's the truth. I'm no longer living for apology. Or explanation. Or repair. I'm living for what comes next. Thea's been encouraging me to start a memoir. Says women like me have stories that matter. I don't know if I will. But I like the idea that I could. That I'm no longer just the backdrop to other people's lives. I'm the story now. I'm the pen. I'm the damn paper too. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real legacy. Not perfect children. Not tidy endings. But this. A box full of letters. A garden full of wild tulips. A quiet woman who kept showing up, even when it hurt. Still soft. Still strong. Still writing. This morning, I watched the sun crawl across my dining room floor. The way it used to. Back when Hector was still alive. Back when Mark was small, and breakfast meant sticky hands and cereal spilled on the table. Back when I thought love was enough to keep people close forever. Funny how light returns to a place before you do. The house is quiet now. But it's no longer heavy. It breathes with me. There's a new rhythm. I wake up with the birds. Make tea. Tend the garden. Write a letter every Sunday. I don't rush anymore. No one is watching me now. No one is second-guessing my memory or reorganizing my drawers. And in this stillness, I've discovered a strange kind of joy. Not the kind that makes you dance in the kitchen. The kind that makes you pause in the kitchen and say, I'm okay. Yesterday, I found a spoon missing from the drawer. Old Evelyn would have panicked. Checked the trash. Blamed herself. Now, I just smiled. Because maybe it's in the garden. Or the compost bin. Or maybe I just don't need to know. Not every mystery needs solving. Some things can just be let go. My garden has never looked better. Sunflowers. Lavender. Tomatoes that grow wild and greedy. Lucy helped me plant them. She visits every other weekend now. Sometimes with her mother, sometimes alone. We bake cookies. Make tea. Talk about books and boys and the horror of middle school. She likes to sit under the tree Hector planted, with her headphones in, but one eye on the sky. Says clouds look different here. One afternoon she asked me, Grandma, why don't you hate Daddy? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I handed her a peach. Watched her bite into it, juice dripping down her chin. Then I said, because hate takes more energy than I have. And because he's still someone I once held as a baby. She nodded. Said, I don't know what I think about him right now. I said, you don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She smiled. Wiped her face. Said, this is the best peach I've ever had. We laughed. And I felt something loosen in my chest. That night, I lit a candle. Sat by the window. Wrote her another letter. Didn't tell her about it. Just wrote, Dear Lucy, if you ever wonder whether you're strong enough, you are. You've already lived through more than most people know. And you're still kind. That matters more than anything. I put it in the blue box. Maybe she'll read it one day. Maybe she won't. It's enough that I wrote it. I've started cooking again. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Banana bread. Roasted vegetables. Sometimes just a fancy omelet for no reason. I sit at the table, eat slowly, savor the silence. There are no cameras in my home. No one tracking how long I'm in the bathroom. No one locking away the stove. And I don't need permission to be here. This is my house. The house that still stands. It creaks. Leaks a little. The wallpaper in the hallway is peeling. But it's honest. And so am I. Sometimes I wonder what Mark is doing. I haven't heard from him since the letter. No calls. No messages. No news. Thea says he's in Oregon, working at a financial firm. I hope he's okay. I hope he's healing. I hope he never does to someone else what he did to me. But I've stopped waiting. Waiting was a second prison. Now I light my candle, make my tea, and say thank you. Not because life is perfect, but because it's mine. One day I know I'll leave this place. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And when that time comes, I hope the house remembers me kindly. I hope it says, she lived here. She really lived. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Thea's helping me draft a new will. We laugh about it, the way people do when they've already cried enough. She asked if I wanted to leave anything to Mark. I said, leave him a letter. She said, what should it say? And I told her, tell him I loved him. That I always will. But I love myself too. And that had to matter. She nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't offer advice. Just wrote it down. One Sunday morning, I found a small package on my porch. Inside, a candle, a book of poems, and a card. It was from Lucy. The card said, I lit a candle today, just like you. It made me feel safe. I held the card to my heart, closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this story was never just about what I lost, but about what I refused to give up. My dignity, my name, my ability to love, without condition, and without forgetting myself. The last thing I do every night now is stand at the back door, look out over the yard, the garden, the fence, the sky. I whisper, still here, and the wind rustles the lavender like it agrees. The house settles, and I know, whatever tomorrow brings, I'll meet it, not as someone broken, not as someone waiting, but as a woman who stood back up and kept going, soft, strong, unfinished, but still standing. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me through this story. It wasn't easy to tell, and I know it wasn't easy to hear, but maybe that's why we needed it. If this touched something in you, please let me know where you're listening from and how old you are. I'd love to get to know you better, to hear your voice, even just in the comments. And if you feel this channel deserves it, please help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. It means more than you know. Until next time, be gentle with your heart. And remember, you're not alone.